for every 3 koalas that go to hospital, only 1 comes out.
So we see a lot of death basically in this region.
So with that massive development up ahead and a quarry behind me, all the development going on around here, that single koala, that has to be one of the saddest things I've seen. Terrible weather today as well, which obviously adds to the mood of the place, but that solitary young koala by itself, really nowhere to go on the ground here. What kind of future does it have?
There's something about koalas that draws us. We can almost relate them to a human baby. Just looking at them pulls you in. I don't understand it, but I know when I lose a koala, it feels more upsetting, you know, especially if you've struggled for a while and you lose.
We need to stop cutting down their home and their food. It's as simple as that. That if we don't turn things around now, they will be gone. And no amount of feeding them up is going to save them.
Monty is nearly blind because of chlamydia, a major killer of koalas. He was in dire condition when he came into the care of Morgan Philpott, a quiet conservation hero in Sydney's Blue Mountains.
With modern life and the way that most of us live in urban areas or city environments, there's a huge disconnect from this, and this is our natural state, and we've forgotten that. A lot of people have forgotten that.
They're not going to survive overcrowding.
Beyond bushfires and disease, it's development, existing and planned, that's the constant in the tragic arc of the koala's story.
There just doesn't appear to be a conscience. Everything's done for the dollar. It's just unfathomable.
So this is where koalas have landed in 2022, 2 years after those devastating bushfires either killed, injured or displaced up to 60,000 koalas on the east coast and into South Australia. Now they've just been put onto the endangered species list, which is nothing for us to be proud of. However, at the very least, it might mean that we see them more than just a marketing tool for tourism or a sports mascot.
We just look at the local stuff. We don't know how to get people motivated. We can tell people what to do. That's it.
All the developers that, you know, promise this, promise that, promise this, they don't do it. They don't do it. What hope have koalas got? That's their main corridor. There's, you know, the Nepean and the Georges River, and they're in between, and they're a healthy colony. Good breeding population. Loss of habitat and car strikes. It boggles the mind, it really does.
Lend-Lease is developing land near Campbelltown in Sydney's west, home to a rare chlamydia-free koala population. For its part, the company says it's following recommendations laid out by the New South Wales Chief Scientist and Engineer to protect and grow the koala population, including replanting trees. People who live in the area fear the opposite is likely, with multi-stage developments putting enormous pressure on koalas.
Koalas, wombats, kangaroos, wallabies, wallaroos, echidnas, you name it, they live there. But farming isn't harming the native animals, because those trees have to be retained for A, to keep the land stable, and B, to give the cattle shade. The government of all levels are allowing this to go ahead. It's certainly not for the good of the local residents, it's not for the good of the native species.
On the way to film a Save Sydney's Koalas protest, I get a call. A koala has been struck by a car.
He is quite injured. His face is...
3 wonderful Wires rescuers capture and secure the severely injured koala. Appin Road is like a killing field for koalas. Vehicles and dogs kill more than 4,000 koalas every year.
This morning about 12:30 we had a call from a member of the public that seen a koala get hit by a car in Appin. For whatever reason that person didn't stop it, this other lady did, and then the koala was quite distressed and did a few somersaults.
It just makes me angry. How does anyone hit a koala in the wee small hours of the morning, knowing that you've hit it, and leave it injured or dying on the side of the road?
The koalas they won't last here, and it'd be totally tragic. And we know that internationally people really do care about our koalas.
This whole area down and through the Cumberland Plain, as this is part of, the last really lungs of Sydney, and if we eliminate this, it's going to have a devastating effect, not just on the environment here, Campbelltown, Appin, etc., but on the hydrology. The only thing we can do is to continue the advocacy and widen the circle of awareness.
Who would not want fuzzy creatures like those cute koalas on Earth? Because they're just a little wonder of nature that we need to keep on Earth.
When you allow housing developments or mining or farming or logging, then the koalas become stressed. You know, if they've got to cross large open areas of ground, they start to get stressed and their immune system starts to drop, and then chlamydia activates.
James Fitzgerald knows a lot about stress and trauma. He survived the horror of the 2020 bushfires, just. Many of the koalas on his bushland near Peakview did not, unable to escape the speed and ferocity of the inferno.
One of the many distressing things, obviously seeing koalas burnt is pretty bad, but also the trauma that they experience. Because of the trauma. Now, koalas normally in care, a couple of days after you got them in care, they learn you're not going to hurt them. They're very quick to learn that. But these koalas that came out of the fires were so traumatised for months. People have to make money, but we also, you know, the koala makes us billions of dollars in tourism. Myself and others, we do have, you know, sometimes backpackers come and help us at our wildlife sanctuaries, and they come from countries all around the world, and they're shocked. You know, they see in all the advertising, you know, photos of kangaroos, photos of koalas. They come here thinking we are like the most advanced country in terms of protecting these beautiful animals, and they're horrified. They're shocked at what they see. You know, that, hang on, what, you don't protect them? You know, then they go back to their home countries. You know, we could be smart. You know, if you protect habitat, I think there's great opportunities for wildlife tourism.
James has some brilliant big picture ideas on things like environmental loans and environmental subdivisions that keep the pristine habitat but add value to it for stakeholders, much like happens so successfully in Africa. So much of our current approach is dreadful for koalas and their precious trees.
So offsets enable destruction of koala habitat somewhere else. It's a bad idea. It's not going to help the koala. And how could I justify it? Oh, I get some money, but I'm allowing koala habitat to be destroyed somewhere else? So it sort of sounds okay, but it's not. It's terrible.
Brisbane will host the Olympics in 10 years, when the koala, a favourite to be the official mascot, will more than likely be on the critically endangered list. Australia's dismal record of species extinction stands as a potentially big international story.
They have nowhere to disperse to. They've got this little patch here where the only way out is to cross major roads. That's just getting busier and busier. So there's more and more houses, more and more dogs. It's just, it's becoming a nightmare that just can't keep up.
Nicole Davies and Sam Wakerley are divine souls, working as volunteers with Pine River's Koala Care, north of Brisbane, covering a vast area. Koala habitat here seems a smash and grab for councils and developers.
So the environment team at Moreton Bay Regional Council are fabulous, but they compete with the need for development that the other levels of government put on them. So obviously we know that the state government's got a strategy. We probably, in sitting here, we don't think there's much of a strategy going on there. You can't tell koalas where to live. They live where they want to live, and we sort of have the belief that if they want to live there, we should, as human beings, protect that.
Don't go that way.
Not that way.
Go the other way, silly.
Just down the road, you've got all these beautiful, ideal koala habitat trees. There's koalas in there. They're breeding in there, and it's going to go under for development. It's not protected. That area is mapped for development. Yeah, he was planning on splitting into three apparently. No DA in there. He's just gone through and cleared it first. The sightings, which are the green dots on the screen, and then we've got the hospital ones, so the sick and the injured from dog attacks in hit by cars.
When you say that the koala's endangered, it sounds good to people who don't actually know, but it's the trees that need protecting, not the koalas necessarily.
Yeah. Well, this is all volunteer, so we then have to go to work the following day, obviously. You're exhausted by the next morning if you've been out chasing koalas all night. But it's also, you know, the emotional impact as well, because we know the majority of these koalas, especially trauma, don't survive. So we know we're sending them up and they're not going to make it.
The story of Trevor is especially heartbreaking. He was hit by a car in the Strathpine area, but recovered his health and strength to be released. A year on, he was struck again, killed this time, shattering Nicole and the Pine Rivers crew.
It was another rescuer that ended up attending the second one, so I didn't actually get to see him, but when I saw that it was him, it was just like, it was devastating.
There are bursts of sunlight and green shoots through this story. Bangalow Koalas President Linda Sparrow's abundant energy is driving a massive tree planting campaign through the Northern Rivers, involving private property owners and communities. We need dozens of projects like Linda's across the land. State and federal governments are forever promising money and land for koalas, but the daily experiences of all koala carers dealing with so much trauma reflect the need for actions, not words. Not far away in this big river country, Linda Wright and Santia Serra see koalas nearly every day within a short walk from home. But the numbers of late are down and sick animals are far more common.
So this is the place of Manuela. Manuela, we identified her like 3 years ago, and we call it Manuela because her mouth is a bit like my mom in Spain, Manuela.
The issues, country and city, are the same, Linda says, underpinned by indifference.
There is a disconnect, and I think a lot of people just think that nature's going to be all right, that they don't really need to do anything. You know, they might love seeing koalas, but they just think that's the norm and it's not going to change, and they don't think that they need to have any agency.
It's not just koalas, I think it's wildlife. When you say what do we want as Australians, I think we should bet on tourism and nature and vegetation and animals is a huge source. It's more than gold or iron ore, so it's going to worth more, millions more, financially and economically. So for the good of this country, just bet on what you already have there.
Remember Monty? As his condition improved over the weeks, he was robust enough to become the first koala to take up residence at the purpose-built rehabilitation centre at the University of Western Sydney's Richmond campus.
You're more than likely to see him try and reach out and grab, but again, it's just an instinctual thing that they do, and it's not a sign of affection to me. As much as I would like to feel that he does, I know he doesn't.
So it's minimum 6 weeks he'll be in care for. If we can get him out healthy, breeding, and then hopefully producing more to replenish the population.
Fires, floods, injuries and illness will mean few vacancies here in the years ahead. It could become a model for similar facilities around the country. But this isn't where we want koalas. We want them out there, living life as they should.
These animals are unique. There is nothing like them anywhere else in the world. And that's evidenced by the power they generate, not just here in Australia, but with people all around the globe. They fascinate people and they really captivate them, and rightly so, that we have nothing else like them in the planet.
With a koala, you either get right with their diet or you don't. And then there's stress levels. You have to, they're easily stressed, you know, they're one of those animals that also internalise their stress. And just like humans, if you internalise it, you become more vulnerable to disease. And if you're living on your adrenaline, you know, you just don't recover very well. Their management is difficult. I think it's probably one of the biggest lessons for me is that every day, if you're a koala carer, effectively you spend your time picking up koala poo, and it's the key to their health in many ways.
The mere thought, the slightest hint of an Australian landscape without koalas should shock us all into action, every single one of us. But if the bushfires couldn't do that, then what will it take? There's one simple question we have to ask ourselves. How much do we value koalas?
We don't have time. We just don't, they don't have time, and a lot of species they live with don't have time. When we think about koalas and trees and all of those things, that's a community. It's like our community. It's their supermarket and their home.
They're just such beautiful, special animals, and it's such an honour to be able to see them on a daily walk.
I don't know how it's going to end for Monty, and that's the truth right now. I hope that we can successfully treat him. And that's sort of where we are with the koalas right now. We're really on the precipice.
It really is the extinction of the koalas if this development goes ahead.
We're clearing too much. Habitat is the key, but also there are changes in climate, and it's escalating. Look, we can't fail. This is a community-based solution. We can't fix it. The little koala carers out there, wires, whoever it is, it's up to the broader community to help make good decisions on how we live, how we interact with other species. Every person needs to take responsibility, and whether you live near animals or not, these animals don't deserve it. They're not part of the problem, we are.
A walk in a forest reduces stress levels and depression and all sorts of things. So we actually need those places. So, you know, it's not just for the koala, but it's for us as well, that we need to protect these special places. And I think we can be smart enough.
We cannot believe that the koala, which is Australia's most popular animal, can be wiped out. I just don't understand it. I will never understand it, and I will never accept it. Future generations will look back at us and say, what on earth were you thinking of?